It is said that the Galactic Combat Exhibition was created to avoid the apocalypse. That is not strictly true. It was created because the apocalypse was deemed logistically unfeasible, financially irresponsible, and, most damningly, unimaginative. The galaxy, in all its fractured brilliance, had grown tired of obliterating planets just to make a point. And so, in an extraordinary display of bureaucracy, war was outsourced to a televised arena in the neutral orbital strip known, with no sense of irony, as the Ring of Harmony. Tonight, the ring pulsed with ceremonial fanfare and industrial aggression. Millions of beings crowded the stands or tuned in via neurostream, tickling their cerebrums with high-definition agony. Massive holobanners rippled above the arena, emblazoned with the finalists' sigils. One, a writhing symbol of the Krell Empire, sharp, metallic, and biologically offensive. The other, a modest Terran ensign, slightly askew, as if even the designers hadn't quite believed in it. From the central dais, the host descended. It was a hovering obsidian polyhedron, officially named the Voice of the Accord, but more commonly referred to as the Brick That Talks. It rotated slowly, haloed in static lightning, and spoke with the velvety resonance of a lounge singer with a war crimes conviction. Esteemed delegates, honored meatbags, and viewers from the gelatinous dimension, welcome to the final round of the Galactic Combat Exhibition. The crowd roared, or at least the species capable of roaring did. Others chittered, pulsed, or quietly released pheromones. Translation software struggled valiantly. Tonight's match, the Brick purred, settles the minor diplomatic inconvenience between the Krell Empire and the Human-Terran Compact. The matter at hand, orbital trespassing and interstellar karaoke piracy. The camera panned dramatically across the arena, a vast, shifting biome of terrain plates, each with its own physics profile. Gravity vectors arched across them like drunken rainbows. Friction fields blinked on and off. Atmospheric pockets fluctuated between methane, argon, and pure existential dread. The galaxy's finest warriors had all tried to conquer this maze. Few returned in more than 3 pieces. And yet, on this day, only one combatant stood in each corner. In Quadrant Alpha, General Carthuan of the Krell, the pride of a dozen wars and the subject of several erotic sculptures. He towered over the field, forearms flexing under chrome-scaled armor. His breath steamed even in vacuum. His eyes were twin supernovae. Each step he took rewrote the arena's gravitational map. He smiled with the confidence of a being who had murdered his way up a food chain and then eaten the concept of fear for dessert. In Quadrant Delta, Mira Elson. Human. 5'8". Weight. Classified. Age. Redacted. Rank. Revoked. Attire. Dull gray combat suit, 1 utility belt, 1 neutral expression. The press packet claimed she had once been a sniper, but no one could agree on which war, or even which side. The betting markets weren't being subtle. Odds ran 3,000:1 in favor of Carthuan. The popular theory was that Mira would slip, cry, or explode on contact. Some fans had already begun composing haikus about her imminent demise. In the VIP box, a sentient vapor composed entirely of parliamentary procedure leaned toward its Glothian companion, a limbless economist made of vibrating rings. "Why is she here?" the vapor whispered. "Publicity stunt," the rings replied. "Humans are charming in a sort of watch-them-fail way. It's good ratings." On the arena floor, Mira scratched behind her ear and looked as though she were listening to music only she could hear. Perhaps she was. Perhaps she'd finally found a beat that made the universe tolerable. The Brick resumed its sermon. Per the concessions accords, energy weapons, plasma constructs, and transdimensional interference are prohibited. Combatants may only employ culturally traditional tools and personal enhancements. This clause was meant to level the playing field. In practice, it ensured that species with bone hammers the size of dreadnoughts had a tactical advantage over, say, humans with arthritis and gunpowder. "The human has declared her weapon of choice," the Brick intoned. A shimmering hologram appeared above Mira, a flute. Not a plasma flute. A plain, metallic wind instrument with a wooden inlay. Laughter rippled through the crowd, at least among those with mouths. Carthuan bellowed across the arena. "Do you intend to soothe me to death?" Mira glanced up, eyes unreadable, and replied, deadpan. Depends how loud you snore. The crowd responded with surprise. A few species took offense. The Krell delegation gurgled with outrage. Carthuan grinned. Delightful, he growled. I do enjoy when they talk first. Gives me something to miss afterward. Mira knelt and began assembling her weapon. To the untrained eye, it still looked like a flute. To her, it was 10 pounds of legacy, violence, and calibration, wrapped in civilian guilt. She ran fingers over the scope, which wasn't there. There was no scope, just her eye and math. The arena shimmered. Terrain plates began to shift, rise, collide. The gravity arcs changed, randomizing, except not really. Not for those who knew how to read their curvature. A klaxon blared, 3 low tones followed by 1 high-pitched scream. Traditional. Combat was about to begin. Carthuan bared his teeth. Let the last human regret their optimism. From the stands, a jellyfish noble inflated with amusement. They'll be cleaning her remains with tongs. But Mira wasn't listening. She was watching the gravity. Watching the plates. Watching the angles form across the 3-dimensional nightmare that was the battlefield. Her mind moved quietly, like frost. Wind. Negligible. Gravities. Intersecting. Carthuan's limbs. Left dominant. Arena shifts every 12.7 seconds. Air density, thin, but not unkind. She finished calibrating the flute. A soft metallic click. Nothing flashy. Nothing meant to impress. The brick's voice dipped an octave. Let combat begin. And the world ignited. Carthuan launched forward with a scream that broke windows in neighboring solar systems. His footfalls cracked titanium. The arena roared back, plates slamming, air swirling. In the blur of motion, most viewers lost sight of Mira entirely. She hadn't moved. Carthuan closed the distance in seconds, swinging a cleaver forged from the bone of his planet's extinct god-beast. It would have turned a tank into abstract expressionism. But Mira stepped sideways. Not dodged. Not leapt. She stepped, half an inch, exactly when the localized gravity cut. The blade whistled past her, kissing empty air. Carthuan snarled. Lucky twitch. She made no reply. Just raised the flute, softly, like a conductor preparing for a symphony only she could hear. And then, the world shifted again. One of the plates slammed upward beneath Carthuan's foot. He stumbled, not disastrously, just a hesitation. But it was enough. Enough for Mira to move. Not run. Look. 4 steps, each placed as if choreographed with the arena itself. She turned, crouched, and lifted the flute to her shoulder. Projectile alignment, 83.2 degrees. A sound, half breath, half thunder. The bullet missed Carthuan's heart. It wasn't meant to hit his heart. It clipped the chain holding his armor's chest plate. The crowd blinked. So did Carthuan. Mira lowered the flute. Carthuan roared and charged again, faster this time. Enraged. Unthinking. But Mira was already moving. 3 steps left, pivot, crouch. Velocity curve, subtract 0.4 arc minutes. Another shot. This one pinged off a reflective plate in the arena, changed direction, then shattered a grav tether near Carthuan's position. The result, a sudden, sharp drop in localized gravity. Carthuan's massive body overcompensated. He floated momentarily, just enough for his next step to misfire and slam his knee into a rising plate. Again, the crowd murmured. Confused now. Was this human aiming? The third shot was quieter. Shorter distance. Clipped one of the armor's joint locks at his right elbow. And now Carthuan was leaking oil. Or blood. Or something that hissed when it hit stone. He growled and swung again. This time, Mira didn't dodge. She dropped flat. Let the gravity field pull her under the blade's arc shot up through a vent. And struck a support hinge. The terrain plate he stood on flipped. He didn't fall. Not quite. He just wasn't where he needed to be anymore. That's when the betting changed. Not dramatically, but the odds shifted. Slightly. From 3,000:1 to 2,800:1. In the VIP box, the ring being vibrated a little faster. Is she calculating? She's dancing, the vapor whispered. By now, even the brick had paused its commentary. Observing. On the field, Mira stood again. Carthuan stared, bleeding, panting. You will die slowly, he snarled. Mira tilted her head. No, she said, quiet enough to be missed. Just precisely. She raised the flute one final time. The crowd leaned in. And she didn't fire. Not yet. She waited. Waited for the gravitational dip. The scent shift. The vibration pattern in the vent system that told her the plates were cycling. Then breathed out. And fired. The bullet ricocheted off 5 surfaces. Passed through 3 terrain layers. Caught a sliver of light and vanished. For a second, nothing. Then Carthuan stiffened. A perfect red dot appeared beneath one of his eyes. He blinked. Staggered. Then dropped like a downed monument. The crowd was silent. Utterly, galaxy-wide silent. The brick finally spoke. Well, it said. That escalated quietly. Mira turned and began walking off the field. Behind her, Carthuan groaned once and stopped moving. In the commentary booth, one of the analysts, a sentient cube made of failing spreadsheets, fumbled for words. She appears to have one. Yes, the co-commentator replied. With a flute. A beat. And then the galaxy began to scream. Mira didn't wait for the noise. Didn't turn to bow. She walked toward the darkened exit tunnel, the rifle disassembling in her hands. Piece by piece, it vanished back into something unremarkable. Behind her, a wave of chaos rippled through diplomatic channels, military chains, and black market arms dealers. But Mira wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about gravity, and how easy it was, sometimes, to let things fall exactly where they should. Then she disappeared into the tunnel, and the galaxy followed, desperate to understand what it had just witnessed. Mira Elson's file was exactly 17 pages long, and 13 of them were redacted with such aggressive inkwork that the resulting document gave several bureaucrats migraines just by proximity. The remaining 4 pages were mostly dental records and a poorly scanned receipt for a coffee purchased on Titan Station 12, which some analysts insisted contained a hidden code. It didn't. She just ordered extra foam. There were, however, rumors. Whispers, really. In the grimy corners of war barge mess halls. In the stillness before orbital drops. In the clink of glasses passed between intelligence officers too tired to lie. They said Mira had once taken out an entire artillery battalion from 20 clicks away during a sandstorm that blinded even the satellites. They said she'd survived the collapse of the Veldran Accord not because she ran, but because she was the one who ended it, with a single bullet through the primary ambassador's auxiliary lung. No one agreed on what war that was, or if it had even happened. What was agreed upon was this: Mira didn't talk much, didn't flinch often, and carried the permanent air of someone who had not only read the worst headlines of the galaxy, but had written a few herself, usually with a scope and a bolt-action flourish. She had been chosen for the Galactic Combat Exhibition not because she volunteered, but because the Terran Compact needed to appear cooperative and quietly unhinged. A weapon, yes, but also a message. Humans, after all, were considered decorative. Adorable, even. They weren't known for strength or size or quantum-enhanced reflexes. They were, at best, entertaining. At worst, statistically unnoticeable. But Mira was not here to adjust perceptions. She was here because someone, somewhere, had made a terrible decision, and now she had a bullet to deliver. The Krell Empire had submitted General Carthuan without fanfare. He did not require it. Fanfares feared being compared to him. He was the kind of entity who entered a room and caused chairs to apologize for existing beneath him. Born on the storm moons of Techarwexx Prime, trained in the crater-glass academies of the Woundlands, he had ascended the Krell military ladder not through politics or strategy, but by killing everything ahead of him until promotion became a survival tactic for everyone else. His body was a shrine to violence. Muscles layered over muscle. Veins that glowed faintly with combat hormones. 4 arms, each with its own preferred weapon and method of dismemberment. His skin, a patchwork of regenerated scales and ceremonial scars, told a history of conquest so brutal it had been banned from several educational holograms. He did not merely win battles. He erased the concept of opposition. The Krell adored him. Not in a gentle way, but the way one might adore a volcano that erupts on command and occasionally gives motivational speeches. Strength is the only honest language, Carthuan once said, during a live broadcast in which he folded an insurgent commander into a pretzel and used him as a visual aid. The clip became a ringtone in 17 systems. In the lead-up to the exhibition finals, Carthuan had already defeated 3 other champions. The first, a crystalline serpentine warlord, was shattered in under a minute. The second, a biomechanical deathcrawler from the mycelium conglomerate, was pinned, dissected, and returned to its mothership in a jar. The third, a water witch from the depths of Neptune's artificial ocean, was simply hurled into low orbit and never found. The betting markets didn't call his fights. They mourned his opponents, which made the appearance of a human, singular, underwhelming, flute-bearing, feel less like competition and more like offering a gift to the gods. Mira arrived at the combat chamber 2 hours before the match, not because she was nervous, but because the room was quiet, and quiet was rare currency in the galaxy these days. She sat on the bench that wasn't built for her height, removed her jacket, unstrapped the case, pulled out the pieces. Each part of her rifle had a story. None she planned to tell. The barrel had been forged from wreckage salvaged after the massacre at Blind Rock, where a unit of colonists vanished and a sniper's bullet was found lodged in the only clue, a recording device that caught nothing but wind and one sigh. The stock was a repurposed violin neck, sanded smooth, inherited from someone Mira might have once loved or merely respected enough to remember. Her fingers moved with automatic precision, assembling the weapon. She did not look at the screen where Carthuan's victories played on loop. She didn't need to. She already knew how he fought. It was in his breathing. She'd listened to it during the interviews, beneath the bluster. A slight pause before rage. A hitch when turning his lower torso, old injury, perhaps. Or overconfidence, calcified into habit. She adjusted the sightless guide. Not that she used it to aim. It was more like a ritual now. Something to balance her blood. Behind her, a technician cleared his throat. Tentative. You, need anything? She didn't look up. A second chair. For my disappointment. Thought we might sit together afterward. The technician blinked, uncertain whether to laugh. He did. Nervously. Then left. Mira exhaled. Humans, she'd found, were often underestimated not because they were weak, but because they were expected to be relatable, predictable, affectionate, kittens with taxes. She had no intention of living up to that stereotype. In the Krell camp, Carthuan flexed all 4 arms in front of his ceremonial mirror, not to admire himself. He did not need to, but to ensure his enemies would see the full spectacle of his wrath before he tore them limb from syllable. His attendants buzzed around him like submissive flies. General, the grav-array has been recalibrated. Our odds increase by... Silence, Carthuan muttered. He stared at his reflection. Imagined how the human skull would look split open on the arena floor. Wondered if there would be enough left to mount as a souvenir. Why did they send one? He asked. A young aide, not understanding the rhetorical trap, replied, possibly to preserve dignity. Or as protest. A symbolic. Carthuan backhanded the air. The aide flew 3 meters and collided with a fruit table. Symbols are weak. He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. Carthuan's tone was gravity. It warped everything around it. He turned toward the entrance of the chamber. Not yet time. But close. Close enough to taste it. The human would come. He would watch her stand. Watch her ready some primitive device. Watch her try to be clever. And then he would break her. Completely. He smiled. His lower left fang gleamed. Across the arena, in a room lit only by a single flickering neon glyph, a power-saving measure or perhaps a cosmic joke, Mira crouched before her rifle. Ran her hands down the barrel. Listened to the hum. She was not thinking about Carthuan's kills, or his muscle-to-hate ratio, or the statistics stacked against her. She was thinking about wind. There wouldn't be any, of course. Not natural wind. But the arena's air patterns shifted as the terrain moved. Most fighters ignored it. She didn't. She never ignored the wind. Outside, the crowd began to gather. Broadcasters fizzed into audio-corporeal form, hawking pre-match analysis like prophets selling postcards of the apocalypse. Ladies and gentle species, welcome to the end of the illusion of parody. Today's match features your favorite mass-murdering war god versus a slightly damp human. The crowd howled. Carthuan's name echoed from sector to sector, a chant of certainty and bloodlust. No one cheered for Mira. But that was fine. Silence suited her better. Back in the central broadcast tower, a diplomatic observer from the Galactic Republic, whose species experienced emotions only through scented oils, released a cloud of something that translated to anxious anticipation, blended with mild pity. Why allow this? It asked its counterpart, a being made entirely of contract clauses. The humans insisted. Said something about sovereignty and spectacle. The Glexan rippled thoughtfully. So it's suicide? The legal entity blinked its clause lids. They claim it's strategy. The Glexan exhaled a mist of skepticism. She's alone. Yes. Armed with a windpipe. Yes. This will not end well. The legal being didn't respond. It simply turned, watched the human finish assembling her weapon, and noted the way her breath aligned with the rhythm of the arena's distant plates. A rhythm no one else seemed to hear. 10 minutes to match start. Carthuan stood at the threshold of the entrance tunnel, claws flexing. Mira finished cleaning her rifle, snapped the final piece into place, and stood. They had not seen each other yet. Not properly. But the air between their corners of the arena buzzed with premonition. Not the mystical kind. The mathematical kind. The kind where trajectory met mass, and gravity made choices. The kind where silence, sharpened just right, became louder than a war cry. 3 minutes to match start. Mira walked to the threshold. The crowd's noise swelled and recoiled. She paused. Looked across the arena. Saw Carthuan. He looked exactly as expected. Towering, terrifying, shimmering with bio-armor and casual disdain. He looked like someone who had never been made to hesitate. Good. That was what made them predictable. Carthuan saw her and laughed. Not cruelly. Not mockingly. Confidently. She didn't react. She didn't need to. She stepped into the light, and the arena recognized her. And Carthuan felt, for the briefest of moments, something like a draft. A whisper. Not of wind, but of aim. And consequence. And the question that would soon redefine what the galaxy thought it understood about humans. The crowd roared. The brick began its introduction. And the battlefield, for one brief breath, held its variables. The arena reset with a low, seismic grumble, like a planetary stomach digesting regret. Plates slid, rumbled, and locked into configurations that, to the untrained eye, looked arbitrarily hostile. In reality, they were designed to statistically favor combatants with a mass greater than 300 kilograms and limb counts exceeding 4. Which was to say, not Mira. Overhead, the announcer, the brick, a consciousness trapped in a sentient cube of soundproofed obsidian, rattled with excitement. Ladies, gentlemen, gelatinous affiliates and photonic clusters, welcome to the moment of mathematically anticipated annihilation. His voice crackled across languages and frequencies. Entire species winced in synchronized irritation. In the red quadrant, weighing in at enough to crush a civilian shuttle by blinking, the destroyer of dreams, the emperor of entropy, the warlord of wreckage. Carthuan. A roar detonated from the stands. It didn't sound like cheering so much as tectonic violence briefly made audible. Carthuan stepped forward, forearms raised, absorbing the adulation with the smug stillness of a deity certain his worshippers weren't imaginative enough to betray him. In the blue quadrant, weighing in at, honestly this seems like a typo, 62 kilograms, armed with a stick that makes air noises, Earth's own emissary of optimistic delusion, Mira Elson. There was a collective hiccup in the arena. Not silence exactly. More the sound of a galactic crowd shifting from bloodlust to morbid curiosity. Mira walked out with no fanfare. She carried her rifle like a violinist heading to rehearsal, not like someone about to engage in mortal combat with an intergalactic nightmare carved out of violence and creative war crimes. Carthuan laughed. His lower right arm pointed at her with gleeful incredulity, like a god discovering satire for the first time. Mira didn't flinch, didn't speak. She simply glanced around the arena, taking in the terrain. She noted the incline of the artificial hills, the jagged obsidian outcroppings, the faint shimmer of the anti-personnel fog at the arena's far edge. The gravity had been calibrated unevenly, heavier on her side, lighter on Carthuan's. Cute. In the center of the battlefield stood a monolithic pillar of chitin and stone, meant to act as both cover and symbol. Every warrior in the exhibition had bled on it. She didn't plan to. "Combatants," boomed the brick, "you may approach the pillar." They did. Carthuan's footsteps cracked the stone tiles. Each impact echoed like a judge's gavel slamming down on a condemned man's spine. Myra's steps were quiet, measured, as though she were walking a minefield she already memorized. They met at the pillar. Up close, he smelled like scorched metal and jungle rot. Carthuan leaned down, his voice a gravel churn. "I admire your bravery, little mammal. It tastes like seasoning." Mira tilted her head slightly, as if considering a passing breeze. "Try not to cry too loudly. It distracts my trigger finger." He blinked. She walked away. Back to their corners. Final checks. Mira knelt behind a cluster of synthetic basalt. She opened a pouch, pulled out a single cloth square, and wiped her scope. Then placed it carefully back in her pack. She wouldn't need it. It just made her feel better. Like a warm-up joke before a funeral. Carthuan removed a chain from around his neck, 37 finger bones, all trophies, and kissed the smallest one. A prayer or a warning? Possibly both. The brick's voice sharpened. "Begin." And everything stopped pretending. Carthuan launched himself forward like a missile built from ancient grudges. 4 arms swinging, 2 to rend, 1 to guard, and 1 to gesture dramatically mid-slaughter. He roared, a sound that vibrated organs in neighboring systems. Mira didn't move. Not immediately. The first charge was for spectacle. She knew this. A test of fear. An attempt to stun the prey into panicked reaction. She stepped sideways, clean as a metronome. 1 foot. Then the other. The blow missed her by a whisper. Carthuan's claws buried themselves in the stone behind her. The arena floor shuddered. She fired. The shot wasn't aimed at him. It hit the pillar. A ricochet cracked upward. Dust exploded into the air, blinding, clinging, disrupting. He bellowed. Swung again. She was already gone. From the stands, it looked chaotic. From Myra's perspective, it was choreography. She dropped behind cover, breathing slow, heart rate regulated by the subcutaneous patch embedded beneath her clavicle. The numbers danced in her mind. Not as calculations, but as instincts fine-tuned through war and repetition. Distance, 12 meters. Gravity, 1.3x standard. Wind modulation, negligible but rising. Carthuan lunged again. She rolled, popped up, fired. The bullet grazed his shoulder, not enough to hurt, but enough to mark. He grinned, impressed. "Futile," he snarled. "You tickle." "Good," Mira replied. "I enjoy a slow build." He charged again. This time faster. Angrier. She didn't run. She dropped to a knee and waited. As he closed the distance, her hand flicked toward a small metallic disc near her boot. He was almost on her. She tapped the disc. An instant later, the terrain to her right exploded. A hidden gravity mine detonated, not enough to kill, but enough to create a swirling pocket of skewed mass. Carthuan stumbled. His left foot dragged. His balance faltered for a half-second. It was enough. Mira turned, pivoted, fired. The round clipped his knee. Not deep, but painful. He howled. The crowd gasped. She moved again. Into shadow. Into silence. This was how she fought. Precision, not power. Patience, not pace. Carthuan adapted quickly. He shifted his stance. Began using debris as shields, closing off her angles. Not dumb, then. Just overconfident. He lobbed a chunk of arena wall at her position. She ducked. It exploded on impact. She coughed through the dust. Switched ammo. Subsonic. Hollow tip. For closer work. He found her again. Charged. She didn't dodge this time. She dropped. Flat. Let the tackle pass overhead. As he soared past, she rolled, brought the rifle up, and fired directly at his exposed back. The bullet sank in. He roared. Not wounded, but offended. He whipped around, snarling. Then paused. She was gone again. Above, the brick was losing composure. This is unexpected sentience. The human is not dying. In fact, she's being rude. Back in the diplomatic box, dignitaries from 75 planetary blocks leaned forward, eyes wide, minds recalibrating millennia of assumptions. She's fighting smart, murmured the Glexan. She's surviving, corrected the legal being. Mira moved between ruined pillars, loading another round. Sweat beaded at her brow. Her muscles ached, but her breath was steady. Carthuan was adjusting now. Slower. More defensive. Less arrogant. She smiled. He'd lost the advantage. She waited until he exposed his right flank, then she sprinted, fast and low. He saw her and turned, swinging wildly. She slid under the blow, rose, fired twice into his upper shoulder, where the exoskeletal ridge was thinnest. Blood, black and steaming, spurted. Carthuan stumbled. The crowd was no longer cheering. They were watching. Mira exhaled. The terrain changed again. Plates shifted. The center of the arena dropped 6 meters, creating a sudden bowl. She didn't hesitate. She dove into the bowl. Carthuan hesitated. That was his mistake. He leapt after her. She was waiting. The moment he landed, gravity shifted again. Mira had recalibrated the mine to trigger once he crossed the threshold. His knees buckled under the sudden weight. She rose from the shadows behind him. One shot. Back of the neck. Not lethal, but disorienting. He spun. Clipped her arm with one claw. She grunted. Pain flared. She rolled back, left arm limp. He charged again. She dropped her rifle. Let it slide across the ground. He paused, puzzled. She reached into her jacket, pulled out a small, curved object. It looked like a flute. The crowd blinked. He laughed. She raised it, blew. No sound emerged. But across the arena, her rifle, now equipped with a biometric signal receiver, fired itself. One shot. Straight into his lower sternum. Right where his redundant heart was located. Silence. Then chaos. Carthuan staggered. Clawed at his chest. Collapsed. His body hit the ground with the weight of disbelief. The arena did not erupt. It gasped. Then it began to roar. Not just for Carthuan, but for Mira. For the impossible. For the beautiful, brutal poetry of it all. She walked to her rifle, picked it up, wiped it clean. Did not look at Carthuan again. He wasn't dead. Not yet. But he knew, as he drifted into unconsciousness, that he had been defeated. By a human. With a flute. And a plan. Mira walked off the battlefield without raising her arms. Without smiling. Without grand gestures. She didn't need them. She had already rewritten the rules. And the galaxy had no idea what to do with that. The aftermath of Carthuan's fall unfolded like a bad software update across the galactic network, unexpected, inconvenient, and entirely irreversible. Inside the arena of legacy, the crowd remained in a kind of stunned paralysis. Eye stalks drooped. Proboscises trembled. One cluster of telepathic gas beings emitted such confused ripples of thought that a lesser-minded fungus in row 12 spontaneously unlearned language. Mira didn't wait for applause. She wasn't expecting any. She crossed the floor with the same quiet grace she'd arrived with, rifle slung, bloodied arm held close, a limp forming but refused. Around her, Carthuan's body was being approached by the medtech drones, floating medallions of sterile concern. They buzzed with indignation as they scanned the ruin of a warrior who was supposed to be unbeatable. One of them beeped loudly, unsure whether to begin triage or compose an obituary. A holographic panel blinked into existence at the edge of the arena, projecting the swirling logos of 17 news networks and 2 opinionated wormhole deities. "Historic upset!" shrieked one ticker. "Human victory disrupts 100-year war odds. We regret our previous broadcast and the assassination pool based on it." Mira stepped onto the exit platform as the floor segmented again, rising like a sacred stage elevator built for someone with no interest in ceremony. She was taken straight to the debrief chamber, polished obsidian, slightly too humid, as if the walls were sweating from anxiety. Waiting for her was a bureaucrat bred in a vat of legalese and caffeine. Zinter Rel, Ambassador-class conflict arbiter, 6th degree. He had 4 eyebrows and none of them knew what to do. You killed Carthuan." "No," Mira said evenly. "I beat him. Which is worse." He paced, hands fluttering. "Do you understand what this means? Carthuan wasn't just a champion. He was a symbol, a deterrent, a delicate geopolitical instrument of mass intimidation. And now he's bleeding on synthetic basalt while the Bexary Confederacy considers launching economic sanctions against your entire species." She leaned against the wall. "Well, maybe they'll invent better sniper training." Zinter paused. "Was that a joke?" "No," she said deadpan. "It was a post-mortem suggestion." Outside the chamber, chaos surged through diplomatic halls like bad plumbing. Ambassadors screamed. Treaties were rewritten in real time. Betting consortiums attempted emergency bankruptcy shielding. The galactic news cycle spun so fast it dislocated. Humans, who were until this moment seen as a kind of delightful evolutionary accident, suddenly had to be considered a tactical variable. The diplomatic feeds were on fire. Requesting clarification, "Do all humans possess these combat capabilities?" asked one panicked envoy. "Of course not," replied the Earth delegate with admirable restraint. "Most of us are still afraid of bees." In the observation vault, Carthuan stirred. His eyelids fluttered open like failing pressure valves. He blinked blearily at the white ceiling. A small voice, more machine than kindness, whispered, "You were defeated." He groaned, tried to rise, realized his limbs weren't entirely responding to his commands. "You're in post-trauma suspension," the voice explained. "Your secondary heart was cauterized. Your tertiary liver rejected the trauma. Your pride has not yet been located." Carthuan growled, then paused. She fought like she knew. "Knew what?" the voice asked. He stared at nothing. Everything. The timing. The terrain. The way gravity turned against me. That wasn't luck. That was intimacy with the battlefield. Back in the debrief room, Zinter was having a mild political hemorrhage. "You're a problem now," he muttered, flipping through dossiers. "An icon. Or a liability. Possibly both. Do you have any idea how many assassination contracts are going to be authorized just for surviving this fight?" Mira shrugged. "I stopped counting after breakfast." He blinked at her. "You expect this?" "I prepared for it." "Who are you?" She glanced at him, eyes unreadable. "I'm the reason people stop laughing before the punchline." Zinter slumped. "You know they're going to demand an inquiry." They always do. Your file is classified so deep it loops into mythology. The Bexari want proof you're not a cybernetic experiment or a lost demigod. Tell them I'm a government contractor with trust issues. His comms unit beeped violently. He held it up, read it, paled. Oh no. What? They want a rematch. With adjusted parameters. No terrain bias. No gravity shifts. No mines. One weapon. One shot. Mira smirked. A duel. A ceremonial recalibration, they're calling it. I'm in. Zinter looked at her. Truly looked. Something in his expression changed. You don't enjoy this, do you? She looked away. I enjoy ending it. 3 hours later, the arena was cleared again. Different this time. A circle of light. Flat ground. No obstacles. Pure symmetry. Across from her stood the Bexari's new champion. Not Carthuan. He was medically disqualified by the virtue of internal liquefaction. This one was smaller, sleeker. A precision killer. No theatrics. No roar. Just a single black visor where a face should have been. He raised his weapon. Mira did the same. The brick, sounding exhausted but honored, called it. One shot. One outcome. Fire on my mark. Silence descended like reverence. 3. Mira exhaled. 2. She adjusted her grip. 1. She closed her eyes. Mark. Both weapons fired. Only one target dropped. The Bexari's new hope crumpled like a forgotten declaration. The arena gasped again. Fewer people screamed this time. Some simply sat down, stunned into re-evaluation. Mira lowered her rifle, holstered it, walked away. No flourish. No celebration. Just a quiet exit. Behind her, the galaxy reeled. In the months that followed, things changed. Slowly, then suddenly. Treaties were redrawn. Training programs were re-evaluated. The Galactic Combat Exhibition was placed on hiatus, pending cultural recalibration. And somewhere in a smoky corner of the diplomacy underworld, Mira Elson's name became the subject of stories. Some true, some fabricated, all laced with awe and fear. The humans, once mocked for their lack of claws, their soft skin, their primitive weapons, were now listed under the category of strategically unreliable variables. The great empires didn't fear them. Not exactly. But they hesitated. And that hesitation was everything. One by one, systems began requesting Earth liaison consultations. Defense contracts. Advisors. Snipers. Back on Earth, Mira sat alone in a small apartment above a noodle bar that played jazz at all the wrong frequencies. She drank cheap tea, watched traffic flicker in neon halos, and read news reports in languages the galaxy hadn't agreed were real yet. Her arms still hurt. But the pain was familiar. Trusted. She'd done what she came to do. Made a point. And when the next threat emerged, and it always did, she'd be ready again. Because sometimes all it took was one well-placed shot, fired by someone nobody saw coming. Not to win a war, but to remind the galaxy who it was dealing with. And Mira Elson never missed.